Hello and welcome to another episode of Try Talk. Today with me, as ever, are my two wonderful co-hosts, Scott Anderson and Isla Headley. We are going to be recapping the European Championships in Molveno that just happened this weekend. Scott and Isla were obviously both there. Scott, I'll start with you. How were your travels over to Molveno and how did you enjoy your time?
The drive was pretty straightforward. Luckily, most of the further away races for us are over now, and we can just drive everywhere. So yeah, it was a nice, lovely drive down to the mountains. It was a very enjoyable week. Without trying to spoil or anything, but for once, I think in the first time of the event's history, it was actually dry. Partly because the event is now held in June instead of September, and I think everyone there had a pretty good week. I think.
But everybody expected it to rain, and I think that's mostly because of you, because you have been forecasting a lot of rain. Usually June is the most rainy month for Molveno.
Well, I don't think I personally have been forecasting it, but when it was announced, I think it was last year, that the event was going to be in June and are going to be Euro champs, everyone immediately thought like, oh, June, it'll be nice and warm. But then everybody looked up the weather data, and statistically, it is actually more likely to rain there in June than it is in September. Maybe we were just lucky this time around, I think.
I love. When did you arrive and how did you enjoy your weekend?
Yeah, so we arrived quite late on Tuesday evening. That left a couple of days to do recce's and things. It's quite helpful because it's only the second time I've been back to Molveno, but it's definitely helpful having been to a venue before to kind of know where everything is. So it gave Tuesday, well, basically from Wednesday, gave enough time to do recce's and things. I was going to say, we had 1 hour of rain on Thursday that was really, really heavy, but it made no difference whatsoever to the conditions on the course.
Really? Did it get a little bit of a dust down at least?
Not really, because it all dried up on the Friday.
I think technically for this time round, they have like very common afternoon showers that it just tends to almost a little bit like a thunderstorm towards the afternoon. But we only really had the one, and it immediately dried out. Like everything was bone dry. It was very, very different from what we've seen the past years.
And we've said this off air, but there seems to be kind of a noticeable lack of drama. So I guess we'll just before the racing. So I guess we'll just move on to the racing itself. We'll start with the men's long course. I'll maybe give a little bit of a breakdown. But first, can we start with the course because the course is as ever in Molveno. It is a swim in the relatively cold water. This time non-wetsuit, which I think was kind of a little bit of a surprise for everybody. I think it was 20 degrees or something like that. Then the athletes move on to a two lap bike course. The first third of the loop is flat. Second third is uphill, and the last third is kind of technical. You get up to this plateau, and then you descend back into town. And then the run is, I'd say, relatively straightforward. Probably one of the fastest runs on the calendar. Mostly over gravel, just a couple technical sections. Do you guys agree with that, or do you have anything to add in regards to the weather and the conditions?
I was going to add the run course was the opposite direction to it was when it was World Champs last year, and it did have
Oh,
some very steep sections to it that you had to pull yourself up with a rope. So I think it was harder than last year's run course.
so how do you think that influenced racing? You think it was harder?
Yeah, well, for me personally, then I was kind of dying a bit on the run, but I think the run course was harder than it was last year.
Yeah, I think to put this into perspective, the run course now was the same direction as it was in 2022 for all of the people who have been Molveno regulars. And the reason they've changed this around is because now that the event is not World Champs anymore and it is a bit smaller, they also changed the layout of the venue. And the way it is done now, it's just more effective to have the run course the other way. But it also means that you get these cool, very, very techy sections that Isla mentioned with the rope in the course because they were uphill this year. And if you run it the other way around, they're just too steep to have them in as downhills. And that's why they were not included in the previous year's edition. About the water,
But were they in
so
in 2022? Sorry,
yes,
these uphills as well. Okay,
yes,
so it's the
correct.
same. So it's the same course as 22.
Yep. I think the way they did it in 22 and this year, all of the foresty sections are more uphill, so it's generally just harder. But what I was going to say about the water is we were also there, or we arrived on Monday evening. We went for a swim on Tuesday morning, and it was absolutely freezing. Like, we went in with a wetsuit, and it was so cold that, like, the first minute, everything just kind of, cramps up, and it's quite uncomfortable. But I don't know what happened. It just heated up massively throughout the week, so that, like, even on race morning, everybody was there with their wetsuit, and then someone said, "Oh, it's a non-wetsuit. It's 20.7." And yeah, that was
But
partly
do you
due to
know?
the massive amounts of sun, I think.
Yeah, but do you know how they measure it? Because I think this probably affects it a lot, right? Like if they measure it in a relatively shallow area.
Mm.
Do you know what the protocol for that is, Scott?
I don't know. There is a protocol. I think maybe someone had a wee in the lake and then they just happened to measure at exactly that point. I've no idea. But I'm not going to complain because I quite enjoy non-wetsuit swims. So
Yeah. And probably quite good to keep the core temperature down, right before racing, because what temperature was it on race day?
I'm not sure, but I think even swimming, when you're swimming hard, and if it was that temperature of the lake, then I think it would have been a bit hot in a wetsuit anyways, let alone like hang around before the start.
Yeah, probably would have gotten a little bit cooked. But Isla, you must
Mm.
have been quite happy about the non-wetsuit swim, no? Or what were your feelings going into it?
I mean, I think we found out when we were setting up our transition, so it was quite soon before the race. I like swimming with and without a wetsuit, so it doesn't really affect me massively. But yeah, it was definitely nice having a non-wetsuit swim and it not being freezing.
I guess we'll maybe just jump into the men's recap in that case. Let me just pull this up. So in the swim, I think it was Michele that led out of a swim again, kind of about 15 seconds, 30 seconds behind in front of all the favorites. So not a huge, massive gap to everybody. Then, notably, two big groups appeared uh, right behind him. One of them containing, wait, let me just pull this.
pretty much everyone, I think, was in that group, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, well, I think it was Artur. Artur for Syria was in there. Felix was in there, and Maxime Chanet, who was super strong. So they must have caught Michela, I think, at the top of the first, or maybe in the middle of the uphill, because then coming into the rest of the loops, there is nobody else there. Behind them was another group of, I think, probably the biggest Uber bikers. So Caraban, Duray, and Artur Fraisier. They came into T2 maybe about 2.5 minutes down, but Michaela at this point was dropped by about a minute. So at the front, you have kind of a free man race between Maxime, Felix, and Artur Syrier. And Artur just, yeah, shows us again that really maybe he did have COVID during the World Champs and that this course suits him so much. I think really the conditions were so different here. The heat must have influenced this race a lot. We can maybe talk about the gaps and the way that changes a little bit later, but he just pulls out the gap to everybody, drops Felix by 3.5 minutes, which is really nuts. I mean, they came into T2 at the same time. Drops Maxime. Maxime really suffers in the heat. He loses not only his third place, but he goes all the way out to, I think it's sixth in the end. Loses 8 minutes on the run. Yeah, so absolutely crazy result by Artur Syrier. I'll read out the top 10. Artur Syrier wins. Felix Fraisier behind him 3 minutes down. Really, I mean, that's a crazy run by Artur. Nicolas Duret in third. Really big performance by him. Actually, I think maybe I wouldn't have expected him to come so well. Maybe top five, but third is really nice. Artur Fraisier in fourth, also super strong. Seb Caraban fifth. He'll be happy with that. Maxime Chanet probably struggled in the heat a little bit too much for his liking. Sixth, Morgan Rhodes in seventh. Morgan just continues his streak of unbelievable performances. Marine Gauthier in eighth. That's honestly a little bit surprising. That's a really nice performance by him. Elliot Laborde at ninth, and Xavier Daflon actually returning to XTERRA. He raced Belgium, I think the week before that, in 10th, showing he's still kind of in good form, and this sort of a kind of a difficult race suits him. But yeah, this race must have been super hard. Scott, you were there. What do you think influenced the men's race? Do you have anything to add there for dynamics?
Well, I think the first thing that I would maybe mention is when you talked about the swim, there was big first group was a lot bigger than just Arthur, Serie, Felix, and Maxime. I think there was literally all like loads of people there. I looked at obviously I think I was at the in that group as well. And if I look at the photos, there was, I think, just heaps of people in there with all sorts of good and maybe less fast swimmers like me. But I also remember that we all went out onto a bike. It must have onto the bike in a big group, and I think it was like 10, 15 people maybe that started out together. And then I remember that I was just at the back of the group with Arthur and Felix when we went into the climb, but then I obviously had to let them go pretty quickly because they just shot up. That was just really hard. I think I rode the climb with Morgan and with who's the I forgot the name, the Belgian Lucas Mees.
Oh,
No,
Lucas
Lucas
Mees.
Mees. We rode the climb for quite a bit, and we had a really fast first lap. I think we rode it in like 44 minutes, but then it was just, the heat was crazy. And then on the second lap you had this big group with Sebastian Carber, Marine Gauthier was in there, Michi Fuchs came in, and they passed us halfway up the second lap, and they were just like flying. It was crazy. And then the run was pretty tough after that. What I heard is Maxime actually jumped into the lake on the start of the run lap to cool himself down. So it's just cooked.
I mean, it's all about managing your core temperature, right? Like if you go over the limit during this race, and I think maybe that touches on to Isla a little bit later in the women's race. Like if you go over the limit and you overheat, you just can't manage the temperature afterwards, right? And so maybe jumping into the water, if you are, maybe that is right, and it would explain why he blew up so much, right? Like maybe he just went over his limit and just wasn't able to cool down afterwards. Yeah, I think what's interesting to me is I don't know how fast Arthur and Felix rode the bike, or how hard they tried, because compared to like a normal XTERRA race, they haven't dropped everybody by like, that's really not where the difference was made by them, right? Like if you look at the gaps again, they aren't changing too much to the rest of the athletes, and it's really just that kick at the end, the run, where Arthur just makes that difference to everybody else. So I wonder how hard they would have actually tried, especially given the heat. But I guess that brings us on to the women's race. We've already kind of segued into it. I'll let you kind of go over it, and I can jump in wherever you want. But how was your day on Saturday?
My day started off pretty nice. Yeah, lovely swim in the lake. There was a little group to the first buoy, and then I know that Emma and Alize were in that, and then there were a couple of others. I'm not sure. I can tell from the splits. But no, I came out of lap one with a little lead and kind of just held that over the second lap. The plan was always to try and go out hard on the bike and really think that fully through maybe with the heat, but once I'm like in the lead, I'm just kind of in the race, and I don't want to lose anything after like having a gap after the swim. I think Alize caught me up maybe about 10-12 minutes into the bike, and I just tried to stay with her on that first initial gravel climb, and I lasted 10 minutes, which is not very long in compared to like the entirety of the bike. And then after the steep concrete section after the road crossing, then I never saw her again, which just shows like how strong she's come back after such a long time off. The rest of my first lap of the bike, just was riding pretty well, and then it was the second climb where I think the effort finally and the heat kind of kicked in, and I kind of died a little bit. Couldn't really stay on anybody's wheel. But I think I maybe made a little bit of time up on the second descent, because it was actually riding really well in the dry compared to last year. Like you didn't have to worry about sliding out of corners or anything. So that was probably my favourite part of the course was the descent. And came into transition 2 just as I think.
I think P4. I think in
Uh,
position 4.
yeah, in position 4 behind Kerry-Ann and Emma. I could see them just leaving transition as I was coming in. But by this point, then I was not having the best of days anymore. And there was a few times on the bike where I did not think I would actually make it to the end of the race. Was feeling pretty rough. I had managed to have all my nutrition and things, so it was definitely just the heat for me that was the limiting factor on the day, and managed to get around the run course. A lot of walking, but yeah, like you said before, once your core body temperature is gone over the limit, then there's not really much you can do. Marta came flying past me, and I was I still had another lap of the run to go, but no, it was a good race up the front, and yeah, strong performances.
Marta was crazy on that run.
Yeah.
Just to give a little bit of perspective, so I'll put some numbers to what Isla was saying. So she comes out of water, maybe 30 seconds on the second pack of riders or athletes, including Romy, Emma. I think Alizé was in there as well. And then, Alizé just kind of motors away on the bike. It's interesting. It's so different to the men's race, right? Again, the gaps here were completely made on the bike. Alizé just kind of there's nobody close to her coming into T2. I think she's 8 minutes ahead of second place. And I don't want to say she takes it easy, but I think she takes it a little bit easy because behind her, I mean, she runs, I think maybe not up to her level. Maybe it's injury still showing itself. Maybe not enough run training. But yeah, I mean, crazy performance by her, just smashing that bike. But behind her, fighting for second and third place, Emma De Croo and Kerry-Ann, they come into T2 together, and Kerry-Ann runs away with it, runs into second place in the European Champs. That's nuts. I mean, Kerry-Ann has been so consistent this year, and you can tell, or not this year, the last couple years, and she's just on this steady trajectory of improving. And to be beating the girls she's beating here, to beat Emma, to beat Marta, to beat Isla, it's nuts. I mean, granted, she does finish 6 minutes behind Alizé, and so Alizé clearly is on a different level still. But nuts by Kerry-Ann. I mean, really big shout out. Behind her, there's another battle. Emma doesn't actually manage to hold on to third place. Marta has by far the fastest run on the day. She absolutely runs everybody down and moves into third position. Crazy by Marta. She has such good form. Maybe the bike didn't go exactly as she would have, wanted to. Maybe she was saving herself a little bit because of the heat. Emma then in fourth, Isla in fifth, Karina Vassal, actually that's a little bit surprising, in sixth, Paula Leopold seventh. She'll be probably pretty happy with that. That's a nice performance. Katja Kren in ninth, Lorena Errol in 10th, and Romy in 10th. Probably not the result she would have been hoping for. She said this was probably the worst day on the bike for her. She probably must have just suffered with the heat. But I have a question for you guys. Who do you think ran the run faster, Alizé or Lorena Errol?
Well, that's a bad way to pose a question, because now we're obviously going to say Lorena.
By 1 second, which I would have never expected. But I mean, crazy run by Lorena. Hats off. I mean, but I think, it shows that maybe Alizé didn't push to her max capacity.
I was going to say, have you heard the phrase, a good horse only jumps as high as it has to?
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, obviously, Alizé's coming back from the injury, and she has her closest competitor 8 minutes down. So,
however, saying that, why did Arthur then run 3 minutes faster than Felix? Because he, a minute gap would have probably been comfortable enough.
I think it's one, dealing with the heat there, and two, I think it's a mental thing between him and Felix, right?
You think it was just
mind games,
a show of force?
Yeah, show of force. I mean, he's good. He might as well make it count, right?
It counts as much as if he's 1 second faster than him. Points are the same, but
I think it does. I don't think they care about points.
Yeah, no, probably not.
Right? But let's move on to the short track. Let's do the women's first. Isla, you were, again, very far up there in the short track. What were your expectations coming into this? Because yeah, you had maybe not the race you would have been hoping for. What was your headspace going in?
Yeah, so I was pretty rough after the race on Saturday, but tried to get some food and some sleep and see if I felt any better. I was just trying to tell myself, like, it's only a 40 minute race rather than a 3 hour race. So, and on Saturday, then I'd managed to be racing quite well for that kind of amount of time. So it was everybody that I was kind of chatting to, like, on the morning of Sunday was just like, I'm so knackered after the full distance. So I think everybody was a little bit tired after that. Yeah, it was exciting how some of the juniors they definitely mixed it up in the swim. That was a pretty rough swim actually, because it was so short to the first boy, and yeah, but no, then came into transition one, I think in about second or something, and yeah, just managed to have a quick transition, which is super important in short track, and push on the bike. But I don't have any power on my bike or anything, so I was just kind of going off effort. And it could see, because there's some bits of the course which kind of like go up the hill and then back down again, and you kind of look around and see who's chasing you. And I was really surprised to see like Alize maybe only making up like a few seconds per lap. So I actually managed to hold out the field off until transition two, and yeah, tried as hard as I could on the run. But if Alize was not running as fast as she could on full distance, she was definitely running well on the short track. So yeah, it would have been nice to turn my weekend around, but no, super happy with the second place, and to come away with that after not the best result for me on Saturday.
Alize caught you somewhere on the second lap of a run, right? So on the second half. I saw a video of you guys running next to each other. Was there any mind games trying to push each other that way?
I think we were definitely fighting for positions going into like the inside lines or on the corners and things. So maybe not mental games, but definitely like physical, like a bit of like argy bargy. But that's just tactics, isn't it? So yeah, it was cool to be back up at the front of the race and yeah, fighting for the win.
Yeah. So Alize takes that win, 13 seconds ahead of Isla. I think, yeah, great performance by both of you. Romy comes back in third. She had a really strong bike, and she kind of fixes her weekend, if you will, running into third. Marta again posts a super strong run split. Just kind of it's been this way for last week. Coming into fourth, she actually speeds up significantly towards the end, beating Mia Lantelme, who's this young rider on Organico. She's in fifth. I think that's a super nice result for her. That's somebody I've been keeping my eye on for a couple months at this point. And she's really progressing nicely, stepping up to the big leagues. Emma in sixth, maybe she won't be super happy with the weekend. She probably would have come here for a little bit more. But I think, yeah, again, the run maybe lacking a little bit here on in the short track. Katja Kren, a little bit of a surprise, I think, maybe in seventh, not bad at all. And then a fight for position 7, 8, 9 between Stepanka Bisova, Paula Leopold, and wait, let me pull up the name of the athlete so I get it right. She is from Inés de Sousa from France, and so she actually beats out Paula in a sprint finish. Great footage on XTERRA's website. For eighth, Paula Leopold in ninth. She'll probably be happy with that. I mean, stepping up to the big guns. And Stepanka Bisova in 10th. I know Stepanka didn't have a great result on the weekend, or the day before that, so she probably also. I think that's kind of the story of the day, right? It was a lot of people didn't perform on Saturday and just had a really good race on the short track.
Yeah, I think quite a few athletes, or myself included, kind of managed to turn it around for Sunday. Yeah.
And maybe can we go back to the course a little bit, because is it a very different course, Scott? Like, do you think it suits different people?
I feel like I'm only here for the course information at this point. The course is primarily the same. I'll try and describe it a little bit for everyone who maybe has been there. So they moved the finish line or the expo area from where it was to where the old transition was. And basically, the transition area is now where the old expo tent was. And that meant that the little back loop that you did around the grass, past the cafe and through the playground, with these wooden bridges that you could ride over, and people like Ben gapped
Hmm.
them and jumped over. Some people might remember those images. All of that part is gone. It would have shortened the bike and run loop by maybe 300 meters or something per lap. And what you do instead now is you ride mostly on the gravel paths that go in between the grassy areas, which also means that the race slows down a bit because you have less grip. Yeah, I think that's the main change. And other than that, all of the action on the far hills where you have the jumps and the log obstacles that are built there, they're all the same.
But it's such a specific course, no? Like it's the only short track that's like really not very technical, no? Or how would you describe it? Like how would you characterize it? What do you think is important there?
I don't necessarily agree with the fact that it's not super technical. It's certainly not a techie mountain bikey kind of course like you would think of in Czech, perhaps. I think with all the gravel paths that are in this year, it gets a different technical character because I feel like the only physically really hard part are the back two climbs on the grassy hill because they really take it out of you. But other than that, you are either rolling down the grassy bits or you are constantly accelerating for maybe 100 meters on a path, but then you have to brake again because there's a corner, and it's less physically demanding, but you have to be able to really try and take as much momentum through a loose corner as you can to maintain your speed. And I think even though that's not any crazy obstacles or cool looking mountain bike features, it does have a technical aspect to it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So I guess it's super close to kind of being a crit. Like it's really the closest we get to a criterium, no? You know what I mean, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so much technical aspects involved there on the bike race as well that you don't see in the bunch handling and all of that.
Yeah, true. I don't know. I wouldn't, yeah, compare it to road crit racing maybe because I think it's still a bit of a different game. And in crit racing, you have big groups, which you don't really have on the short track as much. But yeah,
But I guess speaking of groups, we can go through what happened on race day. So Michele, as always, leads out of a swim, but behind him, only 4 seconds in T1. I do apologize for the people who did race and maybe were somewhere in between. I am going off of the gaps that I made, and I just kind of include the top 10. But behind him, I guess, in my eyes, in second place, 4 seconds off, is Lucas Mees. Lucas said he, at the exit, saw, okay, I'm in, I think, in fifth. Let's hit it. And so he gets to the front of a bike and he just drives it, gets into T2 with Felix. Felix actually loses 2 seconds on him in T2, and that can be really decisive here. We saw last year Jens lost the race because of that to Sullivan, but Felix doesn't let that happen and he runs away. But Lucas Mas holds on to second place, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, this guy's really good, but coming second among this competition is, yeah, really outstanding. Behind him, Maxime had a really strong bike, followed by a good run. He catches Lucas, but I think he just gave it a little bit too much, and Lucas is able to pull away from him at the very end. Federico came into T2 with Maxime, but he loses a lot of places on the run. Maybe just not a great day out for him. I think he comes in, what is it? Let me look so I don't have to count it. In seventh. Behind Maxime in fourth, it's Artur. He really has the run of the day again. By far the fastest here. That's Artur Serrier. Behind him, Artur Forizier. Michele Bonacina in sixth. Spinazza in seventh, as I alluded to. Nicolas Duret in eighth. Again, maybe showing that he's more of a diesel and this sort of a race doesn't really suit him as much as the long course does. Elliot Labourdette in ninth, quite consistent on the weekend. And I want to give a big shout out to Mickey Fuchs in 10th. I mean, he's a young athlete, so again, the short track suits him a lot. That's a really nice result by him. Also, I know we usually only do a top 10, but I gotta give a shout out to place 11, Morgan Rhodes in 11th, and Scotty Anderson in 12th. Scotty, do you have anything to add to the dynamics of this race? I mean, how big were the groups that you were in over the course of it? And is there much thought to drafting and stuff like that?
I think you summarized it well looking at the results, maybe, but I think you missed, or well, you could have not known it, but I think you missed a few key aspects of the race because I'll already mentioned before that the boys were quite close this time, and the swim was, I experienced it as very, very hectic. And I thought about this quite a bit, and I also looked at the results, how people came out of the water and who was where. And I would go out on a limb here and say that the swim has already made a decisive impact on how the entire rest of the race would play out. I know there was massive fighting going towards the first buoy and even on the second lap. And I actually just in the meantime, I looked through the photo gallery to see where people came out of the water. Lucas Mays, for example, must have gotten a really good start and came out of the water in a good position, which I assume would have put him in a good spot to finish the race pretty well as he did in second. I also saw that Michi Fuchs was actually out of the water in front of Felix Farissier, I think, just about, but that would have also put him in a really good spot for the rest of the race. And then I know that some other people, I know that Morgan and me were swimming, I think, a bit further behind. So we started quite in the middle of the pack. And I think when the left and the right kind of joined in towards the buoy, we were kind of caught, which I think threw us back a bit. And I assume the same happened to Arthur Serrier, because I know that I got on the bike just behind him and I kind of rode on his wheel for about 2 laps, which also neatly gives me the opportunity to explain what you asked before, Ollie, how group riding would have affected the course. I think it was... Sorry, I did that again. I think... I need to order my thoughts here. I spent 16 hours in the car. I'm a bit.
I'll just write it down a note because actually I'll give a little bit of insight to our listeners. So the Riverside, the app we do the editing on, has started incorporating a lot of AI into its products, and it is absolutely terrible. And it used to be super easy to cut all this stuff, but now it is terrible. So, and I blame AI. But Scotty, sorry, go ahead.
Right. Yes. Thank you. So, I think there was ample opportunity to profit off of group dynamics and drafting. As long as you had the power to stay with the people on the grassy climbs, you could save quite a bit of energy by just trying to stay on their wheel on all of the rest. And I think looking at the pictures, that's exactly what a few people did. I think Michi rode his bike really well. I think he stayed with Felix and so on. And I know that there was a very big group at the beginning of the bike leg that must have been just behind me. I know that Bart was in it. And yeah, I don't actually know who else was in it, but it must have been like 10, 15 people or something, because we saw them just behind of us. And then obviously that broke up a little bit over the course of the race, because there were certain narrow passages like the beach passage, which looks really nice, but it is incredibly hard to ride because it is basically an off-camber gravel beach, and there is a very narrow path that you can ride on. And if you deviate to either side of it, you will completely lose grip and you basically have to get off your bike. And to make that even harder, the high line where you want to ride is very close to the tape. So I know that there was at least one young athlete in front of us that got caught on the tape and then messed himself up there a little bit. And I think passages like that would have destroyed the bigger groups, but would have been okay if you're in like maybe a pack of 3 or 4 people, because you can just go through there in single file. And then obviously on the run, it was a whole different thing. You saw Arthur Serrier run from what must have been like maybe 10th position or something, all the way towards the front, which is crazy. I'm not sure, but I think he was like 50 seconds back or something, amazing.
Yeah, 50 seconds and closes it down to 22, which in a 30-minute race is huge. He really stands out here as like just Yeah, on the run, there's two storylines there. It's the run of Artur, and sadly the run of Mickey, who came in. He rode that first half of the bike with Maxime, it seems like, but
Oh, it
then
was
really,
Maxime, not Felix. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
with Maxime, the gap's coming in clutch. I mean, the listeners, you guys really have to open this up for if you're listening to this episode. But yeah, he kind of fades on the run there. But I did have a question, and I guess I just want to connect the two topics, right? Like, I mean, you said that the swim is really impactful for this, but isn't it because the bike is so draft heavy, right? That the swim position matters so much or correlates so much with your end result, right? Like in a normal, if this was a super hard race and it didn't matter if you were 2 seconds back and not in the group, wouldn't it, right? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but I don't think that is the case. I think I would rather explain it this way. Considering it is only a 30-minute race and the gaps between positions are not massive, if you lose, if you're in a bad position on the swim and you're in a bunch of people that are fighting really hard, it's easy to lose 10, 20, maybe even 30 seconds on the swim. And unless you can run like Arthur Serrier, you are not able to make up on that gap anymore. And I think that is why the swim was so impactful. Also, something I want to say about the Michi's run. I was running on the second lap and I saw Michi in front of me and I was trying to catch him. And at the same time, Morgan was coming from behind because he was trying to catch me and Michi. And Michi must have seen it. You know, when you go up the steep hill just before you turn around,
Yeah.
I know that he glanced back, I think, and he saw us and he absolutely gave it his all because he just sped up and yeah, we couldn't... neither of us could have catched him. Morgan ran past me and then we ended up in 10, 11, 12. And I think Michi also had his first top 10 in the World Cup here, which is, yeah, a pretty sick result for him.
Big shout out, right?
I think Michi had a really, really good short track all in.
Yeah. I mean, this is what suits him, right? I mean, it's always going to be super hard to transition into the full distances and perform there as a young rider. Like, it's just a different type of effort. But let's give another shout out to Lucas Mas for second, because that's a hell of a performance in, ahead of Chanet, Serrier, and Fourisier. Absolutely crazy by the Belgian. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe next year in Weston Park if he's like able to actually win the whole thing. But okay,
True,
I guess
yeah, he was really good in Weston Park as well, and I would maybe even say the Molveno short track is kind of similar to Weston Park, maybe because it's a lot of the grassy stuff and maybe except the climbing part.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was fourth there, right? I mean, it's.
I think Isla disagrees.
I was going to say
Oh,
one
really?
big difference is that Weston Park felt really long, whereas this one felt really short.
I guess what was Weston
Like,
Park?
I think the
40,
short
50
track for the
minutes?
bike was only like 6K, whereas in Weston Park I think it was nearly 9. Yeah,
But
so
Lucas
it's like,
Mace also was really good at the Weston Park full distance race.
Came fourth, which again punching above his league a little bit there. So maybe not technically the strongest athlete, right? But just strong in a different type of technical ability, right? Could be. I guess, Isla, we did kind of skip you, and because of the connection issues, maybe it's a little bit hard to. But do you think anything else could have played a role here in kind of how the two races played out? Because it's just so specific.
apart from the heat, or
Yeah, I mean, was the heat a factor on the short track as well, you reckon?
there was basically no shade in the entirety of the short track, but I think the race was just about short enough that, like, it was not going to play a huge role as long as you could keep kind of cool enough before the start, so you're not starting super overheated already. There was a bit of a breeze, but like when you're only racing for 30 minutes, then I think like you can just about manage to, even though you're going hard because it's such a short distance, I think you can manage to regulate your temperature kind of before it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right. Let's look at what all of this means for the World Cup. I wouldn't have expected it to really move much, but because Michele who's leading currently the men's, didn't have a particularly good full distance. Nicolas Duret, who came third, is actually really pushing him a lot in second place. Artur Fourisier also kind of having been super consistent over the weekend with a fourth and a fifth. Both of them are within 43 points of him. That can really change if Michele, let's say, doesn't have a particularly good race somewhere, and Michele isn't, yeah, always the most consistent athlete. He has these really good performances. He'll get a podium here, but then he'll maybe be in the top 15 somewhere else. So I think that's something to really keep an eye out. On the women's side, I don't feel like there's going to be too much movement. I think it's just now a question of how far is Alize going to come, but probably won't get into the top three, I don't think. Maybe she'll push Hannah for fourth. But yeah, Hannah obviously a notable absentee of this race. I think the only other person we were maybe missing was Jens, who obviously hasn't been racing much Xterra this year. And Selene also just, I think, just yesterday had some sort of surgery done on her feet because she's been having recurring injuries. I think one more note, something I noticed before we do end this off. I thought Artur was kind of hanging up, Xterra and kind of moving on to road triathlon, but he's racing Xterra Slovakia for some reason, which I don't understand at all. Do you guys have any insight why he would do that?
No, but I
I
saw
don't
that
think
as well.
he's hanging.
No,
Go ahead.
I know. I was saying was I saw that again today. That as well today, but I don't know.
That's really surprising to me. I would not have expected that.
Maybe it's just a
I
bucket
don't
list
think
race.
he said he's gonna hang up road tri though, right? If I remember the episode that you and Annette did with him, he said that he still loves Xterra and he's not gonna stop racing. Maybe it's just convenient timing, and if he's already down in Italy, it's not as far to go to Slovakia. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe it wasn't a. Maybe I phrased myself wrong. I think the way I understood our chat with Artur was that he wasn't really motivated too much to race, and that motivation comes from a high level of competition, and that he just wanted to try something new. And I just don't see that high level of competition in Slovakia, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be Karel Dušek who's going to be there, and Karel is incredibly good. And he didn't have a good day here, but he came 21st. So anyway, I guess that's just something I noticed that surprised me a little bit. I guess the next race is Czech. Scott, are you excited?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's still 5 weeks away.
Yeah. Isla, how about you? Are you coming? You are, right?
I am coming. Yeah, can't wait for the short track. I think that's one of the best races on the circuit. Are you going?
I can't wait. I am not sure. I'm doing the comms for the short track. Kind of have that confirmed, half. And I'm talking about maybe coming to do something, but not confirmed yet. We'll see. It's up in the air a little bit for me, sadly. But I guess that's it for us. Do we have any parting remarks before we say goodbye? Scott, anything you want to share?
Really? I can't think of anything.
Isla, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for listening. It was a pleasure. Thank you guys for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess we'll hear you in a couple weeks, maybe, if we don't do something else between us. I'd like to do an episode on our YouTube breaking down one of the World Championships races 2 years ago, looking at some of the racing strategy, actually. I talked to Xterra and they were super nice about kind of providing some of the footage. But yeah, that's all from us. Stay tuned and hope to talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.